Having been directed by the Males brothers, Gimme Shelter attempts to follow traditions of cinema verite. In creating a documentary in this way, the directors attempt to represent reality more accurately on the screen. Though direct cinema aims to represent truth completely, it could be argued that this is impossible as the filmmaker's presence itself affects the world of the film. Gimme Shelter represents the Altamont Festival, during which the Rolling Stones contributed a free performance. The organization of the event was diabolical, and it concluded with the murder of one member of the crowd. This documentary film intercuts footage of the Stones performing at Madison Square Garden and Altamont with shots of Mick Jagger and Charlie Watts watching and listening to reports to do with the disaster a few months later. Though ideally the directors would film things as they happen, the nature of the access the band provided meant that at times the filmmakers become a part of the film. For instance, during the playing of Sonny Barger's rant on the radio, one of the Males' brothers himself is caught on screen talking to Charlie Watts. Alpha Gug the brothers were aware of this. As an audience we might be more tolerant of this rule breaking in the realism of the documentary, because it takes place after the bulk of the footage, and during the editing of the film itself. The access provided by the Stones heavily influences the perspective that we as the audience are given. It is worth mentioning that the Stones part funded the film, so we might assume that they are represented positively. That is to say that during the Madison Square Garden performance we are up on stage with Mick Jagger as he performs. We see the onlooking audience through his eyes, but we rarely see Mick Jagger through the audience's eyes during footage of that same concert. The directors appear to break the rules of seamless fly-on-the-wall camera work as they slow down shots of Mick Jagger and play songs over the shots without him actually singing. An example of a synchronous sound, that is to say the directors use editing techniques which, despite being very effective in making Mick Jagger look quite glorious as a performer, veer away from attempting to capture reality as it happens. This sequence borrows from poetic style of documentary and encourages us to admire Mick Jagger. What is also important to note is the fact that no investigation into Meredith Hunter's stabbing is actually documented. We never find out if the perpetrator was brought to justice or not. Reasons for this are unknown, but it is another indication of the fact that we only follow the band around. A freeze frame of Mick Jagger at the end was followed by a small montage of the end of the festival on suggestions of the band. Mick Jagger felt that the shot was incriminating and could suggest he was to blame in some way for the disaster. Another shot wherein the band might appear slightly guilty is one wherein the camera follows them as they hurriedly get into a helicopter leaving the festival. Open to interpretation, this shot seems to observe them fleeing the scene of the crime, despite the fact that they did not commit it. Obviously it was no one member of the band who started the trouble in the crowd, but such is the nature of the editing and the material recorded, that the band do appear guilty in this way. With regards to capturing reality and truth, it is feasible to say that the directors were given no choice but to edit a film in a certain way. The band are represented as generally quite positive, and it is the organizers of the event that appear to be guilty. However, we are only presented with one perspective of events, and no audience members or Hells Angels are given a voice, save Sonny Barger's rant on the radio. The conclusive idea therefore is that to capture reality from all perspectives would sacrifice the entertainment value of the production. Waltz with Bashir breaks away from conventional documentary rules, because it is an animated production. Director Ari Folman recorded interviews with people, and then asked the same people to effectively repeat themselves from the script that he had written. This allowed Folman to record people's voices, and then animate the people onto the screen in actual places. We see him discuss the Lebanese civil war in various settings with different people. The director himself has said that filmmaking by nature is subjective and that having animation made the film no less realistic than filming with an actual camera. He talks in the DVD extras about the way choices always have to be made, and filming objectively is impossible, and therefore should not be attempted necessarily, the opposite ideal to the style of documentary in Gimme Shelter. It could be argued that, in animating the film, rather than filming sets, Folman has been given more freedom to recreate ideas of the Lebanon War for the viewer. For example, the dream sequence where the soldier on the boat is rescued by a giant naked woman is a scene that could only work properly if the film was animated. The boat later blows up, and Folman, as well as saving money on budget, can make his point without the scene appearing ridiculous. The animation also helps in the sequence wherein a single car is targeted by the Lebanese army, who consistently hits something else other than the target. This sequence might not appear so comical if it had been shot properly, as opposed to drawn in a stylized way. The main point that Folman seems to make with his use of animation is that it is not really the visuals that matter so much as the narrative and the journey that he goes on during the film. Throughout he seems to stress that memories of the war are strictly personal and are his own. Some scenes suggest that his memory is selective, such as that of the vision of him and other soldiers coming out of the water. Folman did not remember what he did during the Sabra and Shatila massacre, but he does remember the vision of crying women running towards him at the end of it. The scene wherein the film acquires its name depicts a general charging out into a crossfire-ridden street, firing bullets at the world around him. The other members of his crew describe his movement with a gun as a waltz. In the background is a poster of the murdered Bashir, hence the title Waltz with Bashir. Again, another example of fictional reconstruction. This scene depicts the way that the entire film depicts truth from the perspective of one person. It seems to suggest that there is no reality and there is only what people perceive in the world around them.